school system, and you demonstrate how much learning and how every phase of learning through the years impacts all of our students. So if that's something that you think is appropriate and you consider, I'll be sure to get it to them.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that.
So, thank you.
I appreciated the nod to the arts and talking about the importance of the arts, because a lot of times it's left out of education or it's diminished. And a lot of the things that you talked about, like empathy and that's what the arts teach. They teach problem solving, they teach all those things. And they teach that you're able to experience better what other people, who they are. So it's very good for diversity, because there's no right or wrong answers, and there's no grading in the traditional sense. And so well-rounded people often have arts experiences throughout their lives, and as young as you all were at the daycare, that's really, really important. So thank you for bringing that up as an important piece, and I'm glad your research showed that.
Thank you.
So based on your research, because I noticed there were hardly any electronic toys. So you would say those traditional toys, do they beat out the new wave of electronic toys?
I would say they would, because the new toys don't really give the development that you need. You're not really interacting with anything. It's just kind of hitting buttons, and like lights and sounds are fun and all, but when you can really experience what you're doing and see what it creates when you do something to it, it's way more important than the new toys. Is that all? Thank you guys very much.
Well, at least I'm not the first one to cry. Hoping I won't.
It's usually her.
We'll begin our next one. Hamzeh Al-Qawasmi is a high-achieving student who aspires to influence his peers through service and engagement with his community. As the founder and president of Empower HHS, he participates in numerous other activities, extracurriculars within his school, which ultimately helped inspire his project to unite students at our school. While he serves as the student body vice president, as part of student council, he is also an officer in National Honor Society and a member of Nu Alpha Theta, Latin Club, Track and Field, and Junior State of America. He plans to attend Marshall University while majoring in biomedical engineering, and has hopes of being admitted to the Joan C. Edwards School of Medicine following his undergraduate education. His passion to empower the community will continue to thrive throughout his college years and beyond. Aayush Damai is part of the speech and debate team. He is parliamentarian for the Empower HHS group. He did his project on establishing a youth empowerment at Huntington High School, specifically examining the reasons behind why one may start to vape and the different influences. In the fall, Aayush will attend Marshall University as well to pursue his studies in computer science. Ajay Neginhal, member of the honors program, an officer of National Honor Society, speech and debate team, the soccer team, and the tennis team, Ajay Neginhal has maintained a 4.8 GPA throughout his high school. He plans to attend Duke University for biomedical engineering. He also plans to pursue a medical school after his undergraduate studies. The project that the three students have worked on are to help students stand against destructive decisions and prevent harmful behaviors.
Out of everyone who's vaped, about 40% of them are high school students, and about half of that, 20%, are middle school students.
Currently, about 1 in 8 North American teenagers have vaped marijuana. This means THC oils or resins within the last year, and nearly 1 in 10 within the past month, according to a new analysis of data pulled from 17 different studies.
There has been an 1,800% increase in vaping amongst the youth in the past few years. So that leads us to the question. Who are we? Empower HHS is a youth empowerment program that encourages healthy and mindful decision-making through youth empowerment. My name is Hamzeh Al-Qawasmi, and I am the founder and president of Empower HHS. Today I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Ajay and Neginhal, who is the vice president, and Aayush Damai, who is the parliamentarian. So, Empower HHS as a whole is a branch of the Prevention Empowerment Partnership, which is our sister organization. We are also in the process of applying to be part of this organization called Students Against Disruptive Decisions, which is known as SAD. And so far, as a member of Empower HHS, we've done numerous projects, such as going to Huntington East and Huntington Middle School to present interactive lessons to 8th graders about the importance of mindful decision-making and living a healthy, drug-free lifestyle as a whole. So that takes us on to our motivation. As high schoolers ourselves, we saw as the vaping and weed epidemic had spread to the people and students that were closest to us. By finding out the root of the cause, we'd be able to develop solutions and prevention tactics to help at the same time. So personally for me, seeing the rising nicotine and weed epidemic throughout the schools has truly been uninspiring overall. I'm sure I can say that for most people within our school as well. The normalization and regularity of seeing people engage in substances throughout the school on a daily basis definitely affected the overall morale throughout the school at the same time, and I'm sure my peers would agree on that as well. Overall, looking over and going into school every day, going into the bathroom, seeing a group of boys or girls vaping, truly has this lasting impact that you wouldn't believe. Ultimately, like, without regularly noticing it, like, throughout the days, right? As your experience with it kind of piles up, you kind of just start to completely, like you don't even associate it with it anymore. And ultimately, it just becomes something that is regular, which it definitely should not be coming off that way as well. That leads us to our goals. So we have three main goals I want to highlight today. To inform the youth of the benefits of living a healthy drug-free lifestyle, promoting youth empowerment, and getting the students involved within the community, such as through community service or other sort of projects. Just to list a few, I'll touch on this a little bit later, but we worked on mural projects down closer to downtown Huntington, where we painted on the side of a building to ultimately increase the morale. So the work that we do with Empower HHS isn't solely based on drug prevention. We want to get students engaged in things that are going on within the community as a whole.
Okay, so some of my motivation for helping create this group was watching my fellow athletes just spiral into using drugs and nicotine and watching them become inferior athletes. And this kind of led me to my research angle, which was the effects of marijuana on teen decision-making and school performance. So just to give some background, marijuana is a psychoactive drug obtained from the dried leaves and flowers of the cannabis sativa or cannabis indica plant. Despite the 500 active chemicals in marijuana, the substance known as delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC, is responsible for the drug's psychotropic or mind-altering effects. It's the chemical that distorts how the mind perceives the world. In short, it is what causes the high in the brain, as the chemical also helps the release of dopamine in excess caused by the high. So, in addition, potency has increased immensely. Since 1990, which the average marijuana product had a THC percentage of about 4%, now the averages show that there's about 15% THC in these products. In addition, electric cartridges or pens, which are easily concealed and are convenient to vape, are more available to school children, and it increases the amount of users, and the percentages of THC in these products are immensely more. So moving on to some of the harms. THC and marijuana products affect the respiratory system, the nervous system, the immune system, and the brain. Specifically, some of the most important functions such as memory or breathing in general. One key ingredient in some of these electric cartridges is ammonium hydrogen cyanide, which causes irritation and inflammation of bronchial passages and the lungs. And just to give you some context, hydrogen cyanide is a chemical used to kill pests and rodents and such. So these are kind of the ingredients going into these vapes and THC products. It also affects decision making in teenagers, where high schoolers are at a critical point in their lives as they are learning and are made to make decisions and perform complex tasks and participate in extracurricular activities. The NIDA finds that marijuana has an immense effect on memory and attention, which these are both very important for success in school and professional lives after. The NIDA also found that THC products alter teens' ability to make sound decisions. If a teen's judgment is impaired, they are likely to participate in risky behavior. And these may include unsafe sex or sex in general, or going for a drive while stoned or drunk. And that could lead to a number of motor accidents and teenage pregnancies. It also affects personal functions such as motor functions such as timing, movement, and coordination, and are essential for sports. So this kind of leads back to my motivation for joining this group. These help players hit, kick, dribble, swim, and shoot with little effort. And because of THC, these functions are hindered or become worse. Finally, an APA study conducted by, like I said, American Psychology Association also found a link between THC usage and failure to think complexly. Stacy Grover, PhD, a neuroscientist and director of the Cognitive and Clinical Neuroimaging Core and the Marijuana Investigations for Neuroscientific Discovery program at McLean Hospital and Harvard Medical School, found that in her study of chronic cannabis users, many of them were early onset smokers, and they made twice as many mistakes on tests of executive function, which included planning, flexibility, abstract thinking, and inhibition of inappropriate responses. This means that users who started young are unable to complete tasks mentally that require conceptual review of spatial awareness, lack, and fall behind. This is terrible for people attempting to enter a professional field, as many of these fields require such skills.
So my topic was revolved around what causes people to smoke e-cigarettes in the first place. And I shaved this down to mainly three reasons: advertisements, misinformation, and peer pressure. The reason why I decided to take this research angle and be a part of this project in the first place was because of this question. I wanted to know what was the reason why people wanted to do this in the first place. And it was mainly through listening to my friends and people who I knew talk about why they started vaping. And I began to realize that while it's incredibly easy to get into vaping, it's also incredibly easy to prevent it. And first, we're going to be taking a look at different advertisements. So this is a back-to-school vape ad, which is up to 30% off, which is obviously targeted towards younger audiences. And a lot of vape companies, such as Juul, have started to make ads that are very similar to the ads of regular cigarette companies back in the 70s. They copied straight out of their playbook. And you can see that they promote their the people vaping as very cool, and that they use different colors, different flavors as well. A lot of times, older cigarette companies had to were made different flavors, and that was later banned in the 1990s by the government. But you can see vape companies do the exact same thing, where they make different flavored vapes in order to try and to convince a younger audience. And that brings me to misinformation, which is incredibly easy to just spread around, because anybody can post anything online and say something, and it will almost never be fact-checked or re-verified. But the biggest and most prevalent contender, or reason why people begin to vape, is peer pressure. a lot of the people that I talked to said that they were in a social event where vaping was incredibly normalized. Everyone was vaping, and so because everyone was doing it, they felt that they needed to as well when they were asked. And one of the biggest things that are supposed to oppose this is the Just Say No by Nancy Reagan, made in the 1980s to cut down on the rising drug epidemic. A lot of research has shown that her Just Say No campaign was incredibly not helpful. In fact, researcher Pim Coopers, a psychologist at the Netherlands Institute of Mental Health, did a study on this showing that just saying no and trying to promote this in different high schools or really anywhere is incredibly ineffective, because the people who are trying to say no don't have the actual interpersonal skills in order to deal with this environment. Just saying no isn't effective enough. They need to be actually trained and have to have a one-on-one conversation with somebody on this situation in order to make sure that they are equipped with the proper abilities in order to actively say no to the person. And that's why these are three of the biggest reasons why people vape in the first place.
So I want to backtrack a little bit and talk some more about the Prevention and Empowerment Partnership, our sister organization. So about 2 years ago, I started my application process to become a member of the Prevention and Empowerment Partnership. I remember it being 2 years ago at a track meet. One of our fellow members actually reached out and handed me like a flyer, and they were like, "Hey, just take a look at this real quick." And I was like eager. I was like, "No, I'm sure I'm not interested, right?" And I was like, "Let me take a closer look." All right. And they emphasized the fact that as part of the Prevention and Empowerment Partnership, both youth leaders and interns get paid for their stimulus projects as well. They have this sort of, so you basically get paid per project, but also some projects are completely voluntary at the same time. So not only do we have some sort of incentive to work on projects, we also see the direct relation to like how our youth empowerment within school and like outside in the community directly has an impact on the residents here in Huntington. So as I said, let me backtrack a little bit as well. I became a youth leader around 2 years ago or so. We did numerous projects, such as one of these is actually a more recent one, where we created these little things called zines. They're like miniature magazines that we actually distributed at prom, and we which basically just included the ultimate effects of like drinking after prom, like at parties, knowing that all of this is inevitable and that students are going to participate in it. Since we already know that, instead of just telling them not to go out and drink, because we know that as high schoolers, we know that other high schoolers wouldn't want to just, like, why would they listen to us, right? But if they know how to go about certain situations that they're in and how to get out of them safely, then that's us knowing that we accomplished what we need to do. So that being one of them, again, as I talked about the murals, we also conducted these things called alcohol compliancing checks to institutions here in West Virginia, institutions along with other businesses as well. We went to like local restaurants and bars and gas stations, for instance, to see if they could purchase like a bottle of wine, for example, especially with someone who looked younger than they were. We did that in coordinates with the state police. That was just one of the projects that we did. And moving on to the internship that I also talked about. I completed a summer internship this past summer that we, again, it was the same aspects of what a youth leader would do, but we got to take another look at how like it directly impacts the community by going out some more instead of meeting online and directly like helping people out with what they needed. And to wrap this all up with the Prevention and Empowerment Partnership, I attended a conference near the, just like 3 months ago or so. We went to Washington, D.C., National Harbor, exactly. And we ultimately learned about like prevention strategies specifically targeted towards like the youth population. And I distinctly remember this lesson that we actually went to. We had like a variety of lessons that we could choose from, but our organization decided to go with this one. And we ultimately talked about how, because this entire, the Capitan National Forum, that's what it's called, We attended it, and it was literally like all 50 states were there to represent.